Welcome back to the Student Hub Live School of Education Childhood, Youth and Sport induction event. So this session is focused on education studies, the primary sector. And I'm joined by Liz Chamberlain and Claire Saunders. Thank you for coming along. And in true primary fashion, you have got some lovely activities for us to talk about. But first, I wondered if we could sort of pick up this general question about learning, which is really, really fundamental to, well, what you and many other areas of the school are involved with. And this whole question of how you learn and whether it's more important to be open-minded or hard-working.
Yeah, so we wanted to think about the kind of learning, skills that we bring to the learning process. So what set of skills do we personally have? So if we're new to learning, what maybe can we draw on already as we come to that new learning? So that's what we wanted to chat about today.
Okay. So what do you want to think about in terms of how learning, well, how people learn and what learning actually is?
Lots of people have different views about what learning is. So some people might say that learning is knowing a set of skills or a set of knowledge, maybe some facts. Other people might say that learning is around being curious or being interested. Don't know, Claire, what?
Yeah, I think there's a difference, isn't there, between do you just kind of learn stuff or do you learn more about who you are, how to do things, so that there's lots of different ways of looking at it, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I guess the key point about some of this stuff is that it's not neutral. It's something changes, no matter whether that's skill or knowledge or something happens to you when you shift as a person, don't you?
Sure, and in any learning process, you've got yourself as a learner, you've got maybe the tutor, so maybe Claire is teaching me something, and then I've got a set of materials that I'm learning from. So understanding that there are different perspectives and that I bring my own perspectives to that learning as well, I think is really important. So that idea, as you say, that learning isn't neutral, there's lots of mechanisms and dynamics going on at the same time.
Now, we've been talking about some of the stuff that people at home have got to deal with while they're learning, and a lot of people out there are new learners. So this whole idea about learning, and particularly distance learning, learning with a different institution to one that they may have learned with before, requires a lot of sort of shifting and adjusting, which is why I guess it's so important to think about how you learn, isn't it?
It is, and I think that probably the message that we want to get from this session is that if you're new to OU study, you're already being successful in your life. You might have a busy career, a busy home life, you're juggling lots of things that are happening, and it's about how you can turn all of those previous experiences into positives about this new learning that you're going to be doing. So can we show you an example of how we might do that? Okay, so
our first exciting thought.
So what I asked Claire to do was to think about the kinds of things that she's had on her plate. So both Claire and I have studied with the Open University, so we know what it's like to juggle lives and study and being new to study. So I've asked Claire to think about the things that she has on her plate when she's been studying with the OU, and she's going to tell us about those now.
Yeah, so I was chatting to Liz and saying, when I first started studying with the OU, I was married, I had a full-time job. I've been studying with the OU for a number of years. I've kind of gone away, come back to it. And in that time, I've added a couple of children. My parents have got more elderly, so they need a bit more care. I'm a school governor on top of my full-time job and my study and everything else. And there's just daily life, isn't there? There's,
laundry.
Yeah, laundry and, cleaning the house occasionally. And so it can feel like we kind of chose the plate because it can feel like that, It can feel like we're spinning lots of plates and trying to kind of keep them all in balance. So
I think what would be really helpful, Claire, is, so we know you've got a lot of stuff on your plate, is to think about then the skills that you bring to study. So there's a lot of things that you're doing when you're doing these things. So try and have a think about now how you could turn these very busy activities into skills. So think about how you might turn those into skills.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that if you've got all of those things plus your job plus your study, time management is a really important one. Can I organise my time in ways that allow me to kind of continue to spin all those plates? So yeah, time management would be my first skill, I think.
I'm going to write that one down. Check my spelling.
I always check your spelling.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go, beautifully done.
Yeah, what else is going on for you?
And I think, linked to that is the idea that you need to be able to prioritise. There will be times when everything's really busy, and you're like, what must I do ahead of the next tutorial? What's the thing I really need to do so I can get that TMA done? And put that at the top of your list. And, sometimes the house might not get cleaned. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes you might be procrastinating so much it's really clean. Yeah. But it's better if it doesn't get cleaned at all.
Yeah. So we've got time management, prioritising.
Yeah, and the other one I thought about was when I go to school governors meetings, I I'm not very good at finance. So when I have to read long, dense reports about the school's finances, I have to work quite hard to do that. So I think I've learned to read unfamiliar material.
Okay.
So effective reading maybe would be the other one. I think that I can take from somewhere else and use in my studies.
That's really good. So you've got these activities that you're being very successful with in your daily life. Sounds like I need
Apart from the cleaning the house one, yeah.
I need you to come and clean my house for me. And then how you can take those activities that you're very successful in and actually turn them into skills that are then useful. So presumably then for your study, you're managing your time carefully, you're prioritising activities, and then you're able to do this thing called effective reading. So that's quite a useful activity. We thought that students might want to think about doing that as an activity to actually, be honest about what's happening for them, but there are skills that they can bring to the learning process. So that was our first activity. And then what we wanted students to kind of realise then is they are coming to the process already experts in lots of things and how they can transfer that into new learning. So we wanted to introduce this idea called, this phrase called learning dispositions. So within any learning that you do, you've got a set of characteristics or dispositions that you bring to the process. And what we thought we might do is make those visible today so that people could think about the dispositions they bring to their new learning. So it's all attached to this idea around growth mindset, which you might have heard of, or you might have children in school, that a lot of work happens around growth mindset. So this is the work of Carol Dweck. And what she says is that if you're going to do new learning, you need to have a growth mindset. So you need to think about the characteristics you bring to learning and think about how you can actually flex some ideas. We can sometimes be a bit fixed in our mindset about, we're very fixed on views that we have. We hear a lot of that at the moment, of people being very fixed in their particular views and they find it hard to flex those ideas. So we're going to think about learning dispositions. But so for example, maybe I am somebody who perseveres, so I bring that to my OU learning. So I'm really good at persevering with a task. Maybe I'm put in a group with somebody, or I'm in a paired activity, maybe with Claire. Maybe she's not somebody who perseveres so much, maybe because she's got lots on her plate. She is getting busy and she's juggling too many different things. So it's great that I'm going to persevere at this activity, but maybe I need to develop a bit more empathy to realise that Claire is not quite where I am when it comes to my learning. So that would be one example. Claire, you were going to tell us a bit more about this idea of fixed and growth mindset.
Yeah, because I think one of the things you can feel is that the fixed mindset idea is, it can be that sort of idea of, let's take an example, I'm terrible at writing essays. So that's a fixed mindset. That's a negative kind of language. It says I can't do something. And the growth mindset kind of turns that around and is more positive and kind of open-ended in its thinking. So it might say, actually, I find this really difficult, but here are the resources that I've got available to help me. Here's the things I've done in my other parts of my life that mean I would be able to have a go at this. And also recognising I'm not going to be brilliant at it straight away, but that I can build and develop towards it. So there's the fixed and growth mindsets. The fixed mindset says I can't, and the growth mindset says I might be able to.
Okay, so I get that in theory.
Yeah, go on.
So I'm just thinking about how we might give some practical ideas. So we called this session Mind Your Language, because we sometimes feel, in our experience of working with students and having been OU students ourselves, you can sometimes find yourself doing, it's only an OU degree, it's not maybe like what other people are doing, or I'm studying but I'm not very good at it. So, how you speak about yourself and how you speak about the skills you have is really important. And it really does impact on how well you do in your studies as well. So let's give people some practical ideas then, Claire. So give us an idea of something that you might say if you had a fixed mindset.
Yeah, one of the things I get from students a lot is, I hate it when I get my essay back. I hate getting feedback on essays. So that would be a fixed mindset, I think. If I want to turn that into maybe more of a growth mindset, so I'm not going to deny that nobody likes getting feedback. So what I might say is, I'm always a bit anxious when I get my feedback, but maybe I'm going to read it once and then put it to one side, then I'm going to come back to it and I'm going to read it again because I know it's there to help me. So I don't like getting feedback, but I'm going to take my time, listen to what my tutor says, and then I'm going to learn from it. So what about the one where I say, I'm not clever enough to do this, I'm stupid, I can't do this?
Okay. So that's quite ingrained in you, isn't it? Okay, so I still might say I feel really stupid and I'm not very clever, but a growth mindset would then say, but I know I'm doing this for the right reasons, and I know I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to keep in mind my goal. So actually, I do feel this is all new learning, and I'm a bit anxious about it, but I'm gonna stay with it, and I'm gonna keep learning.
Cool. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do another activity, Karen, if that's all right.
That's absolutely fine. Tell us about it, and then I do want to take some questions because there's lots of plate spinning going on at home, so I'd like to hear about that as well.
So what we thought might be useful for people, and this is maybe something they could do at home themselves, and we're going to do it in 2 different ways to show you. So we've got some characteristics here that we've been thinking about, some learning dispositions that we as a team put together, because we both work on the Education Studies primary team. So we pulled out a whole load of learning dispositions we have. We've only got 8 here, and we're going to do an activity called a Diamond 9. So we're missing an attribute. So if people at home do have other dispositions, they might want to send them in.
So just briefly, what is categorised as a disposition then? We've got lots of different words
so we've got different words, different ways of being that you're bringing to the process. So we've got words like
reflective, interested, resilient, engaged, open-minded, flexible and curious. So those are your ideas.
That's what we put together.
And anyone can write anything down.
Absolutely.
But what counts
Yeah.
as a learning disposition then?
Something that is a skill that you can draw on. So it might be from your current studies, or it might be from life, that you're, maybe you're a very resilient person generally. So I think that's how I would kind of
I think it's
categorise
skills
it.
and attributes, isn't it, that you bring to your learning.
Okay, so you two are both going to do it with those sets of words that you've agreed, but anyone could do anything at home. And the 9th word is hopefully something that will come up from that as well.
That would be great.
So how does this activity work then?
So what you need to do is to have 9 different characteristics, and the aim is that we're going to try and make a diamond shape. So we think all of these are important. The aim of this is to prioritise the most important attributes. So we're going to think about which one of these would I put at the top. So that to me is the most important ones, and we'll have different ones. And then underneath that, which 2 are the kind of second most important ones. And then we're going to have 3 in the middle. Then we're going to have another 2, and then we're going to have 1 at the bottom. So the idea is that you're making a diamond shape.
I've literally got mine as diamonds on this
and
here,
you're going to fill this one in, aren't you? So
you can do it in
like that. Brilliant.
You can do it in a number of
But you're
different
going
ways.
to do it differently.
You're going to do your Post-it notes.
I'm going to use mine with a big cardboard box.
Fair enough.
Because I'm a primary school teacher and
Well,
we like
so
big
am I.
boxes.
I like neat cut-out diamonds, so I'm doing it this way.
Okay, so you're going to fill those in. I'm going to have a chat to Sarah and HJ about what everyone's talking about at home, and then hopefully we'll get some other ideas. Right, how's everyone at home?
We've had a good chat about all the different plates we're spinning, haven't we?
There's a lot of plate spinning going on
there.
I think there's some commonalities, isn't there, between a lot of people, would you say?
Yeah, home life certainly is this plate spinning thing. Busy mums, children, family, all those kinds of things. What makes me smile is it's just that. Well, actually, no, it's not just that. There's lots of things. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are saying very similar things, isn't there?
I think it's based on the time of day as well.
Yeah.
You can have different plates at different times, depending on where you are with things. But with the commonalities, I know Sarah said, Samantha said children, home and work, and Katie's got on her mind a new job, so she's thinking about all the learning for a new job that she has to do, as well as OU learning, and could be depend on what you're working as well. So Angela told us that her freelance work knows no regular hours, so that's always on her plate and always in mind as well. But we've had Fiona join us from the faculty in the chat as well, who's been giving us some very encouraging feedback on what employers say about OU students and having all these plates, and the type of words that employers generally use, like resilient, strong multitaskers, committed, incredibly organised, which I think is a great reflection of how well we spin those plates.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, yeah. Because I know that you mentioned that yours is your determination, and that kind of gets you through. So yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Some really good stuff coming out.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think it is one of those things. Often you think, oh, I've got more on my plate than anybody else. And some of the stuff on your plate, like elderly parents, that's just a thing. It's not something that you can necessarily control, but that can also, all of a sudden have a massive impact on your life, or definitely. It cannot. And you just never quite know, do you? Anyway, how have you got on with your activity?
Well, we've discovered that we don't agree.
We don't agree.
Well, there's a surprise.
And we
So,
like
Liz,
some of the words. We liked. I think I like the word determined. I think that needs to.
And multitasking.
Like that too. So before those words came on, I had this one. So the most important thing for me, I think, that I bring to any new learning is being resilient.
Turn it forward a little bit. There we are.
How's that?
Lovely, thank you.
And I am somebody who's very curious, so I've put that at the top. I'm engaged with what I'm doing, and to begin with, I had engaged up here, but then this hard working is there, and that was really important to me. So I moved those two around to show that for me, hard working is probably a higher priority. That's something that I bring to the process. Without being hard working, I'm not sure I would be engaged. So you can see how all these are linking. I'm very interested in lots of things that I'm learning. Open-minded is a bit further down. Claire's got open-minded first. I don't think I'm as open-minded sometimes as I could be. Sometimes my ideas are quite fixed, and I'm probably not always flexible. I could probably learn to be a bit more flexible, and sometimes I don't reflect sufficiently. So I think I have all of these, but that's how I would prioritise, and I think Claire's are a bit different.
I mean, open-minded is an interesting one, isn't it? I would say that I am very open-minded, and that can be really important when you're studying. So I think, and for me, it's really important. But on the other hand, sometimes you can be so open-minded that you never get to the point where you can commit something to paper and hand it in. So it can have its downsides, I think. Engaged and reflective for me were just really important. You've got reflective quite low, haven't you?
Yep.
But maybe I'm just a procrastinator, Liz. Maybe that's my problem. So I think being able to reflect on and accept that that the way you think about something might be different to the way somebody else thinks about something, being open-minded, and then reflecting on, is the way I've just done that the best way I could have done it, or could I have done it a different way, is important. So I do think resilience is important, but for me, some of those other things come higher up because they almost contribute to me being resilient, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting that we had open-minded and resilient were our top ones,
Quite
wasn't it?
different.
Yeah.
And now we've had the suggestion of determined.
Yeah, I really like that.
I wonder whether that might change.
Yeah.
So if I had another Post-it note with determined on, I think that's going to come up here.
Yeah.
And resilience and determined, they're quite similar, but there is. I do like it.
The similarity between interested and curious, because some of these words, they have a big value and they depend on how you interpret them, and in particular how you interpret them in the context of learning, because being interested in like road traffic compared to being interested in a journal article are two entirely different things.
Yeah.
So these words all have a personal sort of nature to them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference for me between being interested and curious is I'm interested to find out about something. I found out about it, that's great. Curious is, what else could I find out? Is there anybody else that thinks about that differently? It's that taking it to the next stage that I think is really helpful, and takes you beyond just being interested to being, somebody that might go on and learn more and more and more.
So do you think if someone had made you do these, say, 15 years ago, you would have had the same words or the same order?
That's a good question, really good question. 15 years ago, I was an assistant head teacher in a school.
You probably needed to be resilient.
I probably have always been resilient, and I would have been hardworking. I probably wouldn't have had much time to be curious. That probably would be lower. I probably would have brought flexible up higher, because as in a busy school, I would have been sort of dealing with lots of different things. So I think these things do change. I probably would still have all of these, and I do like determined.
I think open-minded for me has moved up in the sense of realising how much there is out there that I could learn that might be different to what I've thought or experienced before. I think that would have been lower 15 years ago than perhaps it is now.
Yeah, interesting how things change as well for people, isn't it? And lovely, because like you say, it sort of relates to that idea of what's on your plate versus where you are at any one time. And I bet if those things were different, like you say, there'd be different things. Now, we need to end the session, and I'd like to focus on how students might use this, because it's a really interesting idea, and I love the way that you're sort of, by nature of the shape, forced to prioritise things higher than others, and that it's okay for you to do that, and also for that to sort of represent a snapshot in your life. So how could students use this to support their OU learning?
I think it would be a great thing for people to do on their own, to actually think about what am I bringing to the process. So all of those plate spinning, we've heard from people who've got busy family lives, new jobs, children. What is it that you're already doing in your life well? And can you write that down as a characteristic? You know, we're calling them learning dispositions, but we kind of include skills and attributes. And think about what you're already doing, and then think about that idea of prioritising them. These are all important, and thinking about which for you is the most important. You'll probably feel it's quite a nice positive exercise to think I actually already can know things. We were talking about this morning about if we were working together, it might be good if we both did ours separately and had a discussion.
Yeah, it can be fun to try and negotiate them as well. If you're working in a group, to actually let, can we agree on, I've done that a lot, can we agree on 9?
Easy way to kill 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But also what's good about that is it doesn't actually, the end result doesn't matter in that sense. It's about the conversation that goes on in order to think about how you might agree them is always fascinating.
And then a very practical thing, we thought that students could use this when they're planning assignments. So if they want 9 ideas in their assignment and they write down the 9 different things in their assignment, and then using it as an organisational kind of technique, so they can actually say, right, this is the key message that I want in my assignment. It needs to be there at the beginning and it needs to be there at the end. And then I want to mention these things, but actually they've got different priorities within them. So we think it's got a kind of nice kind of discussion point, but also could be quite practical as well.
Oh. Perfect. Well, Liz and Claire, that's all we've got time for today, but thank you so much for sharing those really practical, useful ideas. And I'm assuming that the growth mindset and learning dispositions are something that students are going to become increasingly familiar with in a number of different ways. So thank you very much. Okay, so a lot of talk about studying with kids. Our next video is Studying with Kids Part 1. And then we're going to be back for our next session, which is about childhood and youth studies. So join us after this short break.